Football fans in Missouri were criticized online after some of them started booing a moment of unity designed to raise awareness, of course, for racial justice. So now the team had locked arms with the Houston Texans for racial equality as the NFL kicked off its season on Thursday. So now this did not happen during the national anthem. Nobody kneeled or disrespected the flag, but apparently if you lock arms before a game in order to raise awareness for racial justice, well, that's enough to trigger people. Now, I would like to show you that, but unfortunately, if I did, I'd be slammed with copyright, and so you can't really show sports games as far as I'm concerned, since they're owned by the big networks. But if you want to check out the video, I will put a link into it in the description of this video, so you can take a look at it and see for yourself. But you're going to see when you do that it's literally the most benign, inoffensive display I've even seen. I can't even call it a protest, really. And still, too much for the snowflakes on the right to handle. Like, you want to talk about easily offended. Racists are like the most easily offended people on the planet. I mean, they're literally getting triggered by the color of somebody's skin. How much of a thin skin do you have in order to get triggered by somebody who looks different than you? Right. And if you, of course, dare to ask for equal rights for those people, well, they just melt like a snowflake. Remember, they're also the ones to claim that they're the first ones to claim that they're not racist, and yet will go and say very racially insensitive things. And then when you say, "Hey, man, that's pretty rude / kind of racist," well, then they say, "How dare you try to infringe on my free speech? I'm the real victim here." Again, booing an inoffensive call for racial unity and justice for all. Kind of racist. And let me give you some details for that, right? And probably some reasons. So now, according to polling, only about half of all Republicans think that black people and Muslims face high levels of discrimination. They also think that about a quarter of women do. Look, it turns out that, no, it's actually a lot higher than that. And at the same time, significantly more Republicans and Democrats think there's more discrimination against Christians and white people. So you have large numbers of Republicans, conservatives, that are saying, yeah, there's a little bit of discrimination against black people, but I think the majority of the discrimination is against white Christians. And that is as a result of Fox News and conservative media constantly bombarding them with, "You're the victim, you're the victim, you're the victim, you're under attack, they're coming for you." Tucker Carlson's show is an exercise in how to scare the shit out of people on a consistent basis. Again, what's going to happen when the mobs come for you? The mobs aren't coming for you. They're not coming to your bum-ass trailer. What they're doing is that they're going after police stations that are, complicit in doing police brutality against black people. That's what it is. But again, you have white Republicans saying, "You don't understand. We're the real victims here." When in reality, they're not, and they have the gall to complain about black people having a victimhood complex. It's insane. But look, the other thing about this, which is really interesting, is, again, and look, when you listen to the video, you'll hear some boos, right? It's not everyone in the stadium booing, obviously. So I'm not trying to say that like every football fan or even every person there is like a, one step away, one step removed from putting on their Klan hood. What I'm saying is that there's still a significant amount of people in this country that are pretty racist. And yet, these same people say to these football players, "We don't care. Why don't you just shut up about racism and just throw the ball already?" That's what we're here for. We're not here to, hear about your stupid protests and your racial equality stuff. No, just entertain me. Throw the ball already. As Laura Ingraham said, shut up and dribble. And if you don't, well, then I'm the victim of the hate crime. Suffice to say, social media was not having any of this stuff. So let me give you some examples of some pretty great responses to it. One person says, what's worse than a milquetoast inoffensive moment of unity? As what this was. People booing that milquetoast inoffensive moment of unity. We can't even unify around 9/11 anymore. And around racial justice without conservatives getting super offended. Another person, if you're booing a moment of unity that has nothing to do with the national anthem, because it didn't, then no form of protest will ever be approved by you, and you're just a hateful person. I love this point. It's actually one of my favorite points because all you hear from All Lives Matter, when there are protests like BLM, all you hear from them is, why can't you just protest peacefully? I mean, the looting, if you didn't do the looting and the rioting and just protested peacefully, we would be fine with that. We would support that. But wait, these same people, when there is a peaceful protest, or you can even, again, call this a protest, super milquetoast and completely inoffensive, just a moment of unity. Can't have that even because, hey, that's we don't like that. Do you know that 93% of all the BLM protests were peaceful? You don't hear that about cable news, right? You don't hear that on CNN. You don't hear that on Fox News especially, right? No, they constantly have B-roll of, fires, cars on fires, and just terrible, terrible things happening, right? 93% though, peaceful. Kneeling for the flag, peaceful. This was peaceful too. And I'm starting to think that what they think of as peaceful just means quiet. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to think about it. I just want to exist without even knowing that these protests are happening. Well, if you don't know the protests are happening, then you don't know what they're protesting about. And I think that's what they like it. Okay? That's what they like. Another person says, America's racist, always booing at demonstrations against racism, never booing at actual racism. Another person points out, Kansas City fans booing the moment of silence and then intensely doing that tomahawk chop is just a way to remind us of who the NFL is and how we can't expect a fraction of what we got from the NBA. So now I'm going to slightly disagree with that point, even though it's a good point. The NFL owners, like the team owners, some of them are pretty shitty people. I'm talking about like Mike Ditka and some of the coaches or all the coaches that got together to blackball Kaepernick. And, of course, the fans that booed him and booed this. But do I believe that every NFL fan is racist? That's ridiculous. No, of course not. Are there racists in the crowd? Yep, there sure are. But, again, I'm not going to try to paint everybody as like this, as a racist, because that's not entirely true. That said, more responses here. So that booing during the show of unity is a real good example of why players feel so strongly about these causes in the first place. Yep. Another person says, my hometown's got no love for unity. They're booing unity now. Isn't it amazing? You just can't do anything anymore. It's crazy. One person points out, let's talk about what the Chiefs are booing. They're booing their own players, peacefully asking for a more just and equal society. More specifically, they're booing athletes for asking that police not disproportionately target black people for violence. What kind of human boos that? Well, a human, I guess, that doesn't believe that this is happening, they know that it's happening, but they just don't care, and all they want is to get the entertainment that they paid for. Dance, monkey, dance. Just shut up and dribble. Throw that football. That's it. Another person points out, Chiefs fans whose team is named after people of color, and many whose players are people of color, began the season by booing a show of unity for people of color. Trash should be seen and not heard. Yep. And there's a ton more. But I want to go to, for the last one here, this is a response from a conservative. This is Josh Hawley. You may be familiar with who Josh Hawley is. Considers himself a populist right-winger, a populist conservative. Here's what he said. Quote, and this is in response to an article, the same article that I'm citing for the story. Classless trash? The left showing their usual contempt for middle America. You know, I actually live in middle America. And so it's a ridiculous point. Missouri has the best fans in the country. Don't blame them for being tired of NFL corporate woke politics jammed down their throats. I'm sorry. This completely, again, inoffensive milquetoast show of unity between black and white players in order to try to, spread the message of, hey, let's end racism, right? That is being jammed down your throat, Josh Hawley. Get the fuck out of here. I mean, what does that even mean? The NFL itself is a corporation, right? But here's what right-wing populism is, right? And so this is what they do. They rail against corporations. Well, I rail against corporations all the time, right? But they go after corporations because in the social issues, they have flipped against conservatives, right? They have flipped on them socially, where it's no longer profitable to shit on Americans who are minorities and to only cater to white Christian men. I mean, yeah, they'll go after, for example, Saagar, right? He'll criticize CEO profits and low wages, right? But they'll only do it in the context of then railing against immigration, okay? They criticize outsourcing, but then they frame it in a way where they blame lower paid, exploited foreign workers, as opposed to, of course, greedy CEOs who drive and profit from that exploitation. And so just at the heart of every so-called right-wing populist, understand that there is deep-seated racism and no real desire to go after what the problem is. And that problem is predatory capitalism.